I'm hoping that's us on air for this evening. Doesn't seem to be very kind at the moment. Hopefully that's... Anyway, good evening from myself. I'm Stephen Kirker. I'm with you for the next half an hour or so, trying to bring you the daily sports wrap. Yeah, that's what it's all about. And, well, it's a Friday, of course, so there's plenty to get through. Now, wonderful stuff happening at the Wanderers, lots of cricket going on. The Currie Cup kicked off today, and good win there for the Cheetahs. Oh, I just realised I'm using the wrong camera. Oh well, these things do happen. I can probably change that shortly. Anyway, a very good evening. How are you doing? Also, Ashley Bohai, she's in a wonderful position heading into the final round of the SA Women's Open. She's maybe I've got the right camera on. she's leading by 4 strokes. Get into that, but what we will do is we'll start with cricket and go to the Wanderers, where Temba Bavuma, well, he hadn't scored a century I think in 7 years, but he scored one today, and wow, what an impressive one it was as well, because South Africa were in something of trouble when he came to the crease, and they lost early wickets on. You remember Aiden Markram and Dean Elgar were not out overnight, but Dean Elgar didn't last very long. I was actually wondering, Dean Elgar, I mean, he's lost the captaincy now. I know Shuki Conrad was speaking about him, you know, being in the team and having a role to play, and possibly leading the A side. That's something that I had in my mind, but he scored 42 in the first innings, not great at Centurion by his own standards. And then we don't play cricket for a very, very long time. So look at that. You know, Elgar was gone. Tony de Zorzi stuck around for 9 deliveries and was out for 1. Then Markram was gone, and Ryan Rickleton didn't stick around for very long. Heinrich Klaassen, he didn't stick around for very long. Björn Mulder scored his test best, 42. But the skipper, head and shoulders, anchoring that innings. And after making a couple of ducks in the first test match, potentially he pushes this one onto a double 100. And I really hope so. The fast bowlers from the West Indies, they were causing some trouble first up. 2 wickets there for Zoe Joseph, 2 for Kyle Mayne, was 1 each for Raymond Reifer and Holder and Kemal Roach. So, I mean, this certainly is one now, I think, which is the Proteas to lose. They're already leading by 356 runs. They were 7, funny enough, let's think about it, there were 7 wickets. There were 7 wickets down on day 1, I seem to remember. Remember, they didn't last long in the morning, so... but at least Keshav Maharaj has already made a couple of runs. So let's see how it goes. India, it was a tough day's work for India in that 4th test match, 4th and final test match against Australia in Ahmedabad, but they eventually dismissed the visitors for 480, made a pretty solid start in reply, 36 not out. And you'll see there from that scorecard that Usman Khawaja and Cameron Green were the architects of that big score. They put on 207 runs, I think, for the 5th wicket. And then Ravichandran Ashwin, who had taken the 1st wicket, I mean, he ended up taking 6 wickets. So, I mean, he's such a cricketer, that guy, and of course he does bat well as well. So, remember, India, well, let me put it this way, Australia has to make the play in this one because they need to win this match if they want to share the series. So they're going to have to look for wickets tomorrow because they're heading into day 3. And if, India bats the whole of day 3 and into day 4, it's going to be, how close they get to Australia, and can Australia then push to make some runs to bowl them out inside, on the final day. Heavy going for the home side in the first test match between New Zealand and Sri Lanka. You see that New Zealand 162 for 5. And some serious bowler against the quicks, visiting quick bowlers. After the visitors were all out for 355. 2 wickets apiece for Asita Fernando and Hiro Kamara. 1 wicket there for Kasun Rajita. But it kind of fell apart for New Zealand. Tom Latham, he made that 67. Devon Conway the first 430. But then Skipper and Henry Nichols, single figures for them. And Tom Blundell out as well. So looking to the all-round talents of Michael Bracewell and Daryl Mitchell to put something on tomorrow with Tim Southey. Yeah, he can score a couple of runs. Matt Henry and then Neil Wagner and Blair Tickner to come. I think New Zealand will do well to get within 100 runs of that Sri Lankan score. But maybe the one game in the Women's Premier League is between Royal Challengers Bangalore and UPW Women. 138 for RCB, great victory for them the other day, but only making 138 today. Elisa Perry making 52 there. 4 wickets for Sophie Eccleston, and the Warriors making a confident start in chasing that one down. Let's now speak about rugby. And hang on, can you see that one? Hopefully you can see that one. Let me see what have I got here. No, you can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that into a new tab, and we'll do that, I think. That should do it. Let's have a look. Okay, it's coming up. Winning start for the Cheetahs in the Curry Cup, the Carling Curry Cup today. Travelling to Kimberley and beating the Griquas 42-19. Look at that name, Ruan Pina. I think he did miss one of the conversions, but metronomic really at the tee and converting those tries. I think it was, how many tries? 5 tries, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 tries, so they picked up a bonus point for that. A bit scrappy though. Roscoe Speckman carded for Griquas. Cassende and Bernardo carded, and Frank Olivier as well. Geez, despite, look at that, that's pretty scrappy. Bernardo, Olivier and Cassende all yellow carded, and Cassende receiving a second one being sent off. So that's not great. Anyway, that's how the Curry Cup started. Now we need to speak about what else comes up. Right. Okay, so that was the first game in the Curry Cup, and I think it's going to be a pretty interesting tournament, and there's actually going to be interesting to see the way the sides that are taking part in the URC deal with the Curry Cup this year, because last time around they may have slipped up with the way they approached the Curry Cup. Anyway, CVP is with us to talk about it. Stevie, I think it's fair to say that some of the coaches erred last year in terms of the way they treated the Curry Cup, and we may see more of the URC players actually participating this year.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think the Curry Cup at the moment is kind of in the coach's hands. It's a tournament that now, because the scheduling has lost a lot of its appeal, because it has very much become a bit of a second tier type of tournament. But I think it comes down to the quality of the product, and the quality of the product is the product is the game on the field. And I think that I think coaches have got almost responsibility now. They're feeling they've got a responsibility to ensure that the product is as good as possible, and for that they've got to try and put out the best teams that they can. So already across the lines, the Sharks, the Bulls and the Stormers, we are seeing URC players playing, and some very top quality players playing, which is really good to see. And it's easy to do now because there's no URC game this weekend. So obviously the URC and the EPCR Challenge and Champions Cup return, those squads will probably change a lot. But at the end of the day, we're talking about squad depth and developing squad depth, and that's what the Curry is for. Then let's see what the squad depth is. But I think something like John Dobson has been very vocal about the fact that he wants to use the Currie Cup to have players really sort of prove themselves. And so he doesn't sort of look at it as a step down at all. I mean, Scary Antabeni has played, for many URC games as a class hooker, playing international rugby, and he's starting for the Western Province, for example. Lionel Kinnear has been in around the block a lot for the Sharks. He's starting there at the Sharks. So I think there's some very good players playing the Currie Cup, and I think as well, it's Storm. I mean, the Pumas and the Greeks have improved a lot. They were in the final last year, and so it's no longer a case of you can just play your B teams, for example, or your C teams and expect to get through. You do actually have to put out some good players in these teams to be competitive.
In terms of that competitive edge, we saw how badly the Lions did last year. I think they only won 2 of their games, but their coach wasn't allowed to, Nzwaki Nkosi, he wasn't allowed to choose any of the URC or even fringe URC players. That certainly must have been a mistake, because some of those URC players kind of spent their time in no man's land, so to speak.
Yeah, the Lions made a very strange decision to almost say the URC squad is the URC squad, and they basically said that they thought that it would be better to have a completely separate squad where players weren't sort of having to choose between training sessions and where they were during the week and stuff like that, and sort of skipping in between. And it doesn't work at the end of the day. And it's interesting to the different approaches. The Lions took that approach last year, had a different squad, different coaching staff. The Bulls and Sharks both, for example, have different coaching staffs for the Currie Cup. Western, for example, John Dobson's coaching the Currie Cup side. He basically said that he's going to have a bit of an extended coaching staff, but that he will be part of the Currie preparations. He will be there this weekend, for example. They will be doing virtual sessions if they are overseas. So it's an interesting sort of dynamic that they are seeing. And I think that the Lions have already seen, Morne van den Berg is starting for the Lions this weekend. Some players who were or are very much fringe URC players. It is very much the players that haven't been getting a lot of game time. You'll see Sweeney, for example. Jakob Asaki played many a URC Currie Cup game for the Bulls starting. So I think they have had to ditch that whole second squad idea. You have to. You can't just afford to play these youngsters because you're doing them a disservice because they're playing at a level they're not ready for. And you're doing a union disservice and the Currie Cup disservice. So I think that was a bit of an experiment. I'm really hoping that this year we'll see a much better balance between rotating players as well as keeping strength in the squad.
Let's talk about the first game tomorrow. Interesting one because Joe Mongalo is making his debut as a head coach in the Currie Cup. And he's got some of the, some experience in his side and some club players and, some of the junior players, the under-21 players. He hasn't had a lot of time together with them. And they take on a pretty, the Griffins are the first division champions from the year before. Again, a much safer squad, but there's presumably a huge gap between where the Griffins, ended as first division champions and where they start in the Currie Cup.
Well, I'm very interested to see what the gap is. And I think I think we haven't seen a promotion and a relegation in quite a number of years. So I think it'll be very interesting to see what the gap is between the first division and the Premier Division. The Griffins were very dominant last year in that first division. They looked like the champions throughout the season. And I think that the Shark side's a good Shark side. I do think there's some quality players. The fullback of Aldo Fleur is a very experienced player. You've got Timolani Boli in you've got Mpilo Gumedi in the pack. Kwesi Mono starting at loose head. So there's some really good players in and amongst a couple of youngsters as you kind of come to expect. Yeah, I'm very interested to see how they play as Joe Mongalo's brand is, but I'm very curious to see if the Griffins are going to be competitive and whether there's this massive gulf between URC Currie Cup First Division, or maybe there isn't such a big gulf, which would be really encouraging if there isn't. So I think tomorrow is, for me, the most interesting game of the weekend in terms of gauging just how far behind our First Division sides are from our Premier Division sides.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you on that one. I mean, I'm also interested to see how the Pumas get on, but that's on Sunday. Before we get into talking about that, Western Province, they didn't have a great Currie Cup last season either. Better than the Lions. The Lions choosing a different approach now. Stormers, of course, South Africa's standout best team in the URC. Is it likely to be the same kind of thing continuing tomorrow with the Lions as hosts?
I think it's a very difficult match to call. I think that they've both put out two very strong sides. As I said, I think there are a number of URC players and top-class players within both squads. Jean de Jong, for example, is starting for this. Now he's almost a bit of a Stormers legend. So it's two very strong sides, and I think that the Western Province are taking things a lot more seriously. I think they do try and get quite a few wins under the belt. It's a competition that John Dobson has won, and I think he wants to win again. But you could look at their side: Connor Evans, Ernst van Rijn, Martin Stone, Ben Jason Dixon, Scaron Tabeni, Kate Bollitt, Jean-Luc Duplessis, Angela Davids. These are all players who have played consistently in the URC. Suleiman Hartzenberg, for example, played SAA. Sadie Sandy in the SAA, both on the bench. Under Hugo Venter, another SAA player on the bench. So Western Province are definitely not taking this match lightly. But the Lions have got some nice players as well. And at home at Ellis Park, obviously they're big on. So I think Western Province are going to be, for me, quite a competitive side in the Currie Cup season. So I think they've now built a good squad depth, and I think they very much looked at this Currie Cup as probably their best chance of silverware. I think they're probably quite cautiously optimistic about the URC, but also understand that they're probably going to have to beat the in-Ireland, which is so difficult, especially with Ireland playing so well. But the Currie Cup, if you were to win the URC one year, get to a URC final the next year, win the Currie Cup, as a union, you're going to sit there saying, well, we can't be a union in the country at the moment. And I think that's very much on the cards for them.
Yeah, for sure. So, which brings us to the Blue Bulls. They take on the reigning champions. Spoke about the final last year where we had Greg was against the Pumas, and Jimmy Stonehouse, he's been at the Pumas for I don't know how many years, but contrast that to Edgar Moratello, who's the coach of, I guess not exactly a mix and match Bull side, but again one of these blended sides.
Yeah, and actually, it's his first solo coaching job. Well, he's worked with junior stuff like that, but this is his first senior coaching position, compared to Jimmy Stonehouse, who is known for taking players who have almost been thrown away, players, young players, and turning them into a really rock solid team. The Pumas are such an easy team to get behind because they've got unity, they've got that sort of togetherness, and they love to be that underdog team that goes on and slays some giants. So yeah, again, it's a good Bulls side. And Bulls have got so much depth. We know the Bulls systems are so good. Their junior structures are phenomenal, and they're putting player after player. They've always had this bank of players. They've always said they're like the Chelsea of rugby, that they've just got this massive bank of players. But at the end of the day, throwing them together, getting a system of play, getting a style of play, and being able to go and play at Puma's side, who have trained together consistently for the last year, won the Currie Cup very deservedly, and know what it takes to beat some of the best sides.
Yeah, it's. I'm quite excited. I hope it lives up to our expectation, because I think you're sounding as interested in it as I am. The Six Nations, there's many permutations possible this weekend, but by the end of it, Ireland could be champions.
Yeah, well, it's a very interesting.
Because if they pick up, if they get a bonus point against Scotland, and either if the England-France game goes either way without a bonus point, then they're champions. It gets interesting, but
so at the end of the day, they'll know what they need to do when they arrive on Sunday, because obviously the England-France game is tomorrow night. So, bar a bonus point victory by either France or by either England, then we know that they're playing to win the tournament. A bonus point win would get them the tournament. Equally, though, that Scottish side's going up there saying, well, if we have any chance of winning the tournament, we have to go out and beat Ireland. And if they were to do it, it blows the entire Six Nations wide open, which would be quite exciting. But my gut says that I don't think there'll be necessarily be a bonus point tomorrow in England versus France. So I do think that when Ireland take to the field on Sunday, I think they'll be taking it to try and win the Six Nations.
Yeah, that should be a really, really excellent game. But prior to that, Italy hosts Wales. Are Italy eventually going to start being able to, be competitive consistently at Six Nations level? I've looked at some of their scores this year, and it suggests they are beginning to close the gap.
Yeah, I personally think Italy go in as favourites. I think that Wales have been so poor; they've made so many changes. Warren Gatton's trying to see what a squad is like, as opposed to putting out a squad that he believes is his best current squad right now to win the game. I think it could backfire, and I think that Italy have, Ange Capuzzo will be a massive loss to them. It's never nice going into a game without the World Player of the Year, World Breaker of the Year. So it'll be a big loss for them. But at the end of the day, I think that they've been playing really good rugby. They've been progressing, and they'll have definitely earmarked this game as the one that they will want and think that they should win. They've been competitive in almost a number of games. They were competitive against Ireland. They came up just short against France. They didn't really look like winning it, but they were competitive. And I think that now they're going, well, we've stuck up there with number 1 and number 4 in the world, or number 2 in the world, and we can now definitely go and beat a Welsh side who are really struggling.
Mm. Now, England, Steve Borthwick is now in charge of them. They made that really, disappointing start to the Six Nations and going down to Scotland. He's made that one pretty significant change to his starting 15 by bringing back Marcus Smith, in for the skipper Owen Farrell. But Farrell just wasn't getting enough points over, was he?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's been a constant grapple in terms of you don't want to leave out Owen Farrell. He's one of the best players of all time for England. He's played over 100 tests. He's been such a good performer. But Smith, Aaron Farrell, just isn't really working, in that midfield there. Ollie Lawrence has been playing good rugby, and I think that they are, just waiting for him to come right. And I think that I believe that it has to be that if Farrell's going to play, he has to play a fly half. It wasn't really working so far, so Borthwick's going to hand the reins to Marcus Smith and see if he can do a job. I would like to see George Ford, to be honest. I'd like to see what he can do, especially under Steve Borthwick, who he's worked with a lot. But I still have my reservations about Marcus Smith. I think he's a prodigious talent, and I think he's going to be a world-class player. But I think at this level, I think he has been shown up a couple of times. But at the end of the day, if he is somebody that you want starting at the World Cup, you've got to get as many games into him as possible, especially with a new coach, especially with a new system. And if he's the one you're going to back, then playing against the French side, who are one of the favourites for the World Cup, that's a very good test of where he is.
Mm. For France, they haven't, been great in the set pieces. Their carrying has been problematic at times. But and they haven't won at Twickenham, I think, since 2005. Can you believe it? But some people are suggesting, this game is France for the taking. Would you agree with that?
No, not necessarily. I've been very underwhelmed by France, to be honest. They've had some very good moments. They've had some very good performances. I was heavily criticised for criticising them for in their Ireland performance. I thought that they were a bit sloppy. And we said, no, Ireland were just terrific and France played well. And I thought they did play well in patches. But a year ago, this French side looked like they couldn't be beaten. They were that gelled. And I thought that Romain Intermac has had a very underwhelming tournament. I think that pack has been exposed a couple of times. Whilst they still remain a world-class side, there are chinks in the armour. And I think that if England can exploit those chinks in the armour, England side, which are never far away from being able to beat anyone. That's the reality. They've got so many good players. They've got such a good squad. They're never far away from being one of the world's best. So if they can sort of flip that switch and put in that performance, then I think that I think they can do the job. I personally think that England are probably the favourites to win, being at home against the French side, which, as I said, for me, haven't been as clinical and as impressive as I have seen them in the last year.
Clinical and impressive. One thinks of the work that has happened with Ireland, with Schumacher as their coach, and it's difficult to see them not coming out on top against Scotland, surely.
Yeah, the team that Ireland have named is silly. It's the best team they've named the entire tournament. You look at every single position and think that they are just a class above the rest, to be honest. It's Ireland's to lose. Scotland will have to play the perfect performance to beat them. I don't think it'll happen. I'm cautiously optimistic that Scotland can run them close. You also tend to think that Ireland's winning streak has to come to an end at a point. But looking at that Irish side now, I just don't see how they lose.
I don't know why I said Schumacher, film director, of course, Andy Farrell. Okay, so there's a very good chance that Ireland are going to be the Six Nations champions come Sunday.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably going to be the news of the week.
Stevie, thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Cool. Thanks, Steve.
And of course, remember that the matches over the weekend will be streamed live on Forever Sport with Stevie. Check out our menu for what's coming up on the page. And don't forget, if you're enjoying the program, please give us a like and do add a follow. And of course, if you want to become one of our members, sign up there as well. Also in rugby, this guy was played. He's been in awesome form, actually. The Waikato Chiefs picked up the their third bonus point win of the Super Rugby Pacific season. They beat the Highlanders 28-7 today. They'll be top of the standings at the weekend's at the end of the weekend's action, whatever happens. They were scrappy at times and up against an improved Highlanders. The man there, Sean Stevenson and Samuelson Turkale, made all the difference. Stevenson scored a brace of tries in the second half. Both of those coming with the Highlanders down to 14 men. Now the Highlanders, well, they lie bottom of the standings. We'll have a look at that log shortly. But let's go to the other match at the FMG Stadium. Well, that was the match there. The Melbourne Rebels held on to pick up their first win of the season. They beat the Waratahs 34-27. After trailing 6-17 at half-time, the Waratahs fought back to briefly take the lead through tries from Mark Tawasi and substitute Charlie Gamble. I've put up the results there, and substitute Charlie Gamble. The Rebels hit back with tries to Matt Gibbon, Carter Gordon and Reece Hodge penalty goal to lead by 14 again. Now the Tars did get a consolation try from Tulane Sio at the end of the game. It was 5 tries to 3. So the rest of the matches this weekend drew against the Crusaders, Hurricanes at home to the Blues, Brumbies taking on the Reds, and the Force taking on Moana. I wonder what's... I mean, these matches have been reasonably competitive, but some of the Pacific Island Nation clubs perhaps missing something a little bit, but I guess they will come up to standard. Where are we going now? Oh yeah, I wanted to have a look at this one. If you wonder what goes on at a Bok camp, what do I do with it? Oh, I didn't bring it. Maybe I put it there. Oh, that is disappointing. Anyway, SA Rugby, well, the Springboks at least, they posted a picture of the lads playing some football. That was the guys who were on the training camp for the last 3 weeks or so. And there we go. Thank you very much. We'll have that. Thank you very much. Yeah, have a look at that. I mean, as far as football skills go, that looks like an injury about to happen right there. Anyway, the 14 players who did take part in the nearly 3-week Springbok training camp, they're headed back to their franchises after that camp wrapped up today. Another 8 players have been called up for an alignment camp this weekend. Who were they? Well, they're Stormers hooker Joseph Dwebe, number 8 Evan Roos, scrum half Herschel Yankees, fly half Mani Libok, and utility forward Dion Fourie. The Bulls flanker Marco van Staden and wing Spoon Corsi. And from the Sharks, scrum half Grant Williams. No on-field training for these lads. I'm not sure if they're going to be playing soccer though. It's a chance for Jacques Nienaber to explain his plans for the development of the reigning World Cup champions and what areas he hopes to improve before their title defence in France later this year. Similar camps are planned. Also, some online camps will be held with overseas-based players who are in contention for the squad that's chosen for France. The Boks, thinking about a 5-day test match, and the Boks play a lot of test matches this year. Although it's a shortened rugby championship, they're going to be playing Australia at Loftus, New Zealand at Auckland, Argentina at Ellis Park in July. They then also travel to Buenos Aires for another game against the Pumas, then head for Europe, where they play Wales and New Zealand again. Then it's basically up to the World Cup. Now, in golfing news, she's on fire. I don't think it looking really good for Ashley Buhai. That's at the Investec South Africa Women's Open. You can see there she's 4 shots clear of the rest of the field as they head into the final round of that tournament. I want to just pull up the scoreboard. There we go. And bring that to share with you. Here, put that on. Yeah, I have to explain explain with you. You see, she's shot a round of 69 today, which was her the worst round of the tournament. Actually, 64, 65, 69. You don't want to go shoot a 73 tomorrow, actually. That would make things a little bit tight. 4 strokes clear of Spain's Alana Palés Trevino. Chiara Noja, who was first round lead, is back there on four strokes behind as well. Other South Africans, Cassandra Alexander, not having a bad tournament actually, being fairly consistent, 270s and at 68. Kaylee Telfer is also in there after shooting 79. Let's now move to the Sunshine Tour. And as you can see there, this is the Mediclinic Invitational at the Centurion Country Club. And George Coetzee is the leader heading into the final round on 20 under par after shooting 65 today. Coetzee one clear of Jake Redman, who signed for that 64. Now, Ruan Korb, who was the leader after shooting 63 yesterday, he slipped back to a share of third with a 69 today. They were all 3 strokes back. Now, George Coetzee, apologies for the rather dodgy audio on this one, but he was speaking after the tour. He said his round of 7 under par, he's had 2 of them this week, and being a Liverpool fan, he thought that was an important number for him.
I think I'm quite fresh mentally, and I'm kind of just trying to stay in the moment and make good decisions. And yeah, the golf feels solid, but I'm not really relying on anything specific. I'm just kind of plodding along and trying to play my game. No, I don't think there's anything that's comfortable about leading tournaments. I think it's a grind, and it's exciting. It's always you don't get that opportunity a lot in your life, and I'm excited to learn and get better at trying to seal the deal.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, George. He's won overseas. I don't think he's won in a while. This is the leaderboard for the Magical Kenya Open presented by ABSA. And South Africa's Dylan Mostert didn't have a great time in the second round. He shared the overnight lead on 7 under par, but a triple bogey at the par 3 fifth and bogeys at 9 for the second day in a row. And another 13 were hard to offset, but 4 birdies got into 72 strokes. That was 1 over par for the day. Another South African you can see there, Jaden Skepo, did set up the clubhouse target at 9 under, and but just a little bit later, Nacho Elvira, the Spaniard, cropped up with a 65 to lead at that halfway mark, 1 shot clear of that group, including Sherpa Rio Hisatsuni and Nick Buckham of Germany. John Catlin, who was the co-first round leader, he's back another stroke there on 8 under par. Other South Africans, Wilco Nienaber is there at 6 under par with Dylan Mostert, Casey Jarvis, and Rudy Yaches at 5 under par. Work to be done by Dylan Fratelli on the PGA Tour. He's, as you can see there, Dylan Fratelli, he's 4 over through, I don't think that's up to date actually. Let me just refresh this. 5 over through 9 holes, according to that, the latest at the Players Championship. So I think he started the day at level par. So obviously finding the going difficult at TPC Sawgrass. Okay, I'm just waiting for it to load there. Thank you very much. Dylan Fratelli, 5 over par through 9 holes. Garrick Higos slipped back to 1 under, and Christian Bezuidenhout, we'll have to see how he goes a little bit later. The lead there held by Ben Griffin and Chad Ramey at the moment on 8 under par. Oh, some motorsport news. This is quite interesting. Well, I thought so. Hopefully you all agree with me. And here's the car. That's the car. This is going to be the new drive of Jenson Button. Yeah, 2009 Formula One champion Jenson Button will get to rekindle his track rivalry with 2007 F1 champion Kimi Raikkonen in NASCAR. He plans to take part in 3 races, the first of which is the Circuit of Americas on March 26. Also lined up for the inaugural Chicago Street Course race on July 2nd and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course on August the 13th. He'll be behind the wheel of that car, number 15 Rick Ware Racing Ford Mustang. It's supported by Stuart Haas Racing. Button also in action at the 24 Hour of Le Mans later this year. He teams up with Jimmy Johnson and Mike Rockenfeller in a modified next-gen Cup car being prepared by Hendrick Motorsport. Cycling, and there was no racing possible in the Paris-Nice today. Why was that? Well, because of the weather. Apparently the wind was exceptionally violent, and despite exploring possible alternative routes, and at one stage they were thinking of doing a sort of 80k sprint stage, the wind didn't ease up enough, so they thought safety was better. Several trees were blown down in that part of France. The racing will resume tomorrow in Nice for stage 7. The day ends with an ascent of Col du Quillol, which is 15.7 k's of climbing at an average of 7.1%. Tadej Pogacar's in the lead of that overall, also leading the young rider standings. Jonas Gregard de Wilsley is wearing the polka dot jersey of the mountain climber. Mats Pedersen is in the sprinter's green jersey. But there was racing at Tirreno Adriatico, but also it was affected by the wind. So what happened today was the stage was actually shortened and by 2.5 kilometers because of conditions at the summit of Sarnano Sasseto. So down to 168 k's. There was a new breakaway today. Anthony Perez of Cofidis, Eric Vetter of Euro Cometa, David Ballerini of Sudal Quickstep, Simon Guilherme of Arkia Semsek, Florian Stork of Team DSN, Zadnek Stabar from Team Jayco Alula, and Quinn Simmons of Trek Segafredo. American Simmons, he couldn't handle their pace, which is a bit surprising actually, because he had come in with some reasonable form, I thought, but he was brought back. He's back in the peloton after 55 k's of racing. That break eventually, petered out as it did, and the last 3 riders were caught with 30 k's to go. Bora and Victorious were, Bora Hansgrohe, they were protecting their race leader, Leonard Kamner, but he couldn't quite hold on in the final stretch. It was this man, Damiano Caruso, who broke away from the leading bunch 5 k's from the finish. He was still leading by 23 seconds with 1.5 kilometers to go, but then the chasing pack kind of rallied. Tauge Gegenhardt was one of the people who went up there and actually launched the sprint, but Giulio Ciccone came past them all, and it looked like he was going to take the win, but what happened was Primož Roglič powered past him to win the second day as well. So that's Roglič crossing the finishing line. And it's the second win in a row. It's an incredible comeback to form for Roglič. He had an operation in the off-season, but clearly his training is being paid off. Last season wasn't a particularly good one for him, so he had that operation to sort out some issues. But 2 wins in a row, and he says he might even shave his legs now. Wow. So Roglič now leads the race by 4 seconds from Kamner. I think I've actually got the standings here somewhere. Just got to know where to look for them. Well, I'll give you a picture of the. It's not. That's not no use. He also leads the mountain classification with 20 points. Roglič, Giulio Ciccone and David Bass are next on 16 and 13 points. Roglič is also in the points classification, 24 points to Jasper Philipsen's 2. I think that is where we'll leave the Daily Sports Wrap for this evening. Fantastic that Temba Bavuma has managed to score his second Test century, and wow, it would be great if he takes it to a double 100 tomorrow. That would be excellent. Probably he's looking to push to win that series 2-0. And then it's going to be so sad because there's not going to be Test cricket for a long time. Anyway, have a great weekend. Hope to talk to you Monday. Ciao.